That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, we just got out our running back rankings for the week, so of course you can go and check those out, and you know we are going to continue to talk about these start-sit decisions that we have for week 3, so make sure you subscribe to the channel. And what I need to do right now is stall a little bit for me to pull up our most recent video. That way I can go through and give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats. Y'all know we are going to the comment section on every single video, picking out multiple comments and making sure that we are getting y'all out some Fantasy Flock Network hats. Our first comment going to be from Tom A. Coffin, who says, "What looks better, my 3-0 week in Dynasty or me in a Flock hat?" Okay, my man, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Tom has been a long-time supporter of the channel. Definitely recognize the name. Definitely recognize the profile pic. Thank you so much, my dude, for being a part of the flock. Make sure you shoot me that email. You can find the email in the description of the video with an address I can get that hat to. And let's find another comment. Our next comment coming out from Edson Garces. Never seen this name one, but thank you anyway for being a part of the flock, saying losing all of my hair from these past 2 weeks and need a hat. Okay, my man, I got you. And I'll say, as a 22-year-old losing his own hair, I feel you, my friend. I feel you. And yeah, let's go through, and I think that should be it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video. And yeah, we'll be live streaming every single night this week. So make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you can come out and join us in these video premieres as well as our live streams every single night. And now our first wide receiver that we are going to be talking about is going to be Tyreek Hill after the down week. Y'all know with Tyreek Hill, I actually did not have him ranked as our wide receiver 1 this past week. I decided to put Davante Adams over Tyreek Hill instead. A lot of y'all told me I was stupid, but I didn't love the matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens. At the same time, I thought Davante Adams was just a smash. But here, Tyreek Hill, this is what we're waiting for. Going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, we have seen Tyreek Hill just demolish the Chargers before. And I mean, I think that you're just viewing it as a scenario where this can turn into a shootout. I mean, we have seen the Los Angeles Chargers give up a decent amount of points. While, yes, this defense is pretty good, it's not like they're just shutting down the opposing offenses. I think that you could see Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs putting up 35-plus points in this matchup. We know that the Kansas City Chiefs defense in their own right has not really done anything in terms of stopping opposing offenses up until this point. So, I mean, this is clearly going to be a shootout game where there's a ton of upside on both offenses. Tyreek Hill back in week 1 had a week where he went for almost 200 receiving yards. I think very few people are going to be just trying to argue with us about having Tyreek Hill as the first wide receiver overall. And in that same tier, the only wide receivers in tier 2, we're going to have a Davante Adams. Now, with Davante Adams, we actually had him over Tyreek Hill this past week, but these are going to be the guys essentially in tier 1 throughout the entire season. I think we'd be very surprised if something shakes it up, unless Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen just turn into what they were at the end of last season. I'd imagine that Hill and Davante Adams are going to be in those top 2 spots. Now, with San Francisco, I'm a little worried in that we haven't seen the 49ers yet really give up any production to opposing wide receivers. In week 1, they gave up a decent amount to T.J. Hawkinson. They also gave up a decent amount to DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams, but nothing to the wide receiver position. Very similar to what we had in week 2, where, I mean, I actually called Devontae Smith a must-start wide receiver, and, I mean, just the wide receivers in this offense for Philadelphia couldn't get anything going against the 49ers defense. I think it'll be a little bit different with Davante Adams here. Y'all know I just think Davante Adams, from the main perspective, is the wide receiver 1 for the entire season. This is just a bona fide stud, an extremely high floor and an extremely high ceiling. I mean, in a game where you had Aaron Jones with 4 touchdowns this past week and Robert Tonyan coming away with a touchdown as well, Davante Adams still dropped over 20 fantasy points, so you love to see it. And I think once you see some of that positive touchdown volatility hitting Davante Adams, you're just going to see a monstrous week. Now, going down to tier 2, we're going to have a familiar name with Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs. Now, I think this is just a situation where maybe it's a little bit harder to project Josh Allen and this overall offense to be as productive as they were this past year in the same way that they were. Because y'all know this past year, they were that elite team just throwing the ball, and literally never running it. I think maybe defenses, at least what we saw with the Pittsburgh Steelers scheme in week 1, are onto that just a little bit, where they are going to have to begin running the ball a little more. That's what we saw with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss this past week. But also keep in mind, they blew out the Miami Dolphins 35-0. So that could have also been why they decided to lean on the run a little bit more. Maybe it was just a game flow type of thing. But Stefon Diggs, still an alpha elite wide receiver attached to Josh Allen. Not really worried about the matchup. Just go jam in Stefon Diggs as your wide receiver 3. Now, the next wide receiver in this tier will be DeAndre Hopkins at 4, going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I kind of discussed this whenever we were talking about Chase Edmonds as well. I actually think that with Hopkins, while on paper it's a fantastic matchup, I mean, going up against Jacksonville, we know that this will be a scenario where you're just going to have the Arizona Cardinals probably winning by 30. But to be honest, I mean, this game is probably going to get out of hand if you see a 2-touchdown game in the third quarter where you're just having the Jacksonville Jaguars have no shot to get back in it. Maybe you actually see this Arizona Cardinals offense slow down the pace of play just slightly. I mean, y'all know this is a team that one of the reasons they're so electric from a fantasy football perspective, not just that they have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with Kyler Murray, not just that they have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL with DeAndre Hopkins, but it's also based around the fact that this is a team that pushes that pace of play. They're going to run a ridiculous amount of plays every single game. Maybe they slow that down just a little bit against Jacksonville because, I mean, when you're going up against the Jags and Urban Meyer looks as bad as he does, I don't necessarily think you have to be pushing the pace of play. I think maybe they get up early and then coast to a victory here. Now at 5, we're going to go out on a limb and we're going to have a wide receiver that has been mainly disappointing through the first 2 weeks, but I'm still willing to stand by him as an elite option this season. Let's go Calvin Ridley as the 5th wide receiver here. With Calvin Ridley, yes, it's been disappointing, but we have to also keep in mind that this is a new head coach with Arthur Smith. Maybe this is a scenario where you just have a little bit of growing pains with this offense. And as well, I mean, they went up against Tampa this past week where they just got blown out of the water. I mean, that's not necessarily going to be predictive of games going forward. And also in week 1, it was a blowout against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think now when they're going up against the New York Giants, this should be a relatively close game. And I'm honestly really excited to see what we will have from this Atlanta Falcons offense now that they are going up against a pretty bad defense in New York. So yeah, we're going to be jamming in Calvin Ridley with aggression. Keep in mind, Terry McLaurin just destroyed this defense on Thursday night whenever he had Taylor Heinicke throwing the ball, not Matt Ryan. Now, a wide receiver that we will have at wide receiver 6 based on a good matchup. Now, y'all know I actually said that we wanted to go through and be trading Cooper Kupp away right now for A.J. Brown. I stand by that, but for this week, we're going to have Cooper Kupp in our tier 2 of wide receivers, given the fact that with Kupp, he has been unstoppable. I mean, he literally is like the wide receiver 1 in fantasy currently. He looks fantastic, and this should be a game where it's a clear shootout between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think that you're ever really going to have a Rams team deciding to lean on the run in this matchup, just given the fact that they do have Darrell Henderson banged up. And also at the same time, they're going up against the toughest run defense in football. So here, I think you're viewing Cooper Kupp as just a very safe option that you have to be jamming in. And now going over to wide receiver 3, we will have Keenan Allen here. So Keenan going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. We've already addressed this just slightly, and that I really think that this game can be a shootout between two teams. And Keenan Allen, one of the safest options you're going to have in a PPR format. Now I know that Mike Williams has been fantastic so far. We'll get to Mike Williams at the end of the video. Make sure you stick around to see exactly where he's ranked. But with Keenan Allen here, I think that you're just going to see a very high floor, a very high ceiling. I think you're going to see Justin Herbert kind of just putting the people questioning him to rest. They're going to be having to shut up about what they're saying about Justin Herbert right now. Going to love this matchup going up against Kansas City when in week 1, Baker Mayfield looked pretty damn good. And in week 2, Lamar Jackson did as well. Now, our 8th wide receiver, I have no idea why these numbers are messed up, but this is going to be A.J. Brown here at wide receiver 8. Really hope that we didn't miss anybody and Thomas is going to have to put him in afterwards. But A.J. Brown, I think this is one of the clear buy low candidates. If I had to just put my name attached to 2 buy low candidates going into this week, you're going A.J. Brown and you're also going with Saquon Barkley. But A.J. Brown, he's led this team with targets through the first 2 weeks this season. That opportunity is there. We need to take a step back instead of just looking at his fantasy production with his final points at the end of the week so far in 2021. We need to understand that as a rookie and as a second-year player in the NFL, A.J. Brown was one of the most efficient wide wide receivers in the entire NFL. So now that he is still continuing to lead his team in targets, there's no reason to expect that A.J. Brown is taking this significant step back going into his age 23 season. I'm going to really like what we're having A.J. Brown here. And now our wide receiver 10 will be Justin Jefferson against the Seattle Seahawks. So Seattle just let up approximately, I think, 2.7 million fantasy points against Derrick Henry in the rushing attack for the Tennessee Titans. But at the same time, they just let up a very big game to Julio Jones himself, one of our bounce back players of the week. So love to see that for Julio Jones. Justin Jefferson still leading this team in targets in Minnesota. Surprised to see exactly how much usage KJ Osborne is actually getting. I mean, maybe they're just using more 3 wide receiver sets here now that they don't have a significant tight end. Of course, it would be a lot better if we just had those 2 wide receiver sets. We had Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith Jr. in there to more so make sure that Justin Jefferson is coming away with that elite target share. Hopefully, they stop using KJ Osborne, vulturing away some of these points from Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson soon, even though Thielen has been a beast just based off those touchdowns. But we still have to have Justin Jefferson in this same tier. Now, talking about a player that has not been that productive, and I know people are starting to panic. I don't really care. DK Metcalf going up against Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota has been a very bad defense so far in 2021. They gave up a lot of points against the Cincinnati Bengals, made Joe Burrow look like a pretty damn good quarterback. And then in week 2, they gave up approximately 1 million points for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, of course, Arizona does have Kyler Murray, so you have to keep that in mind. But DK Metcalf is still a wide receiver that there's no reason to expect him to regress. I mean, very similar to his former Ole Miss teammate in A.J. Brown. I think he's a very intriguing buy low candidate. Now, yes, Tyler Lockett's been the wide receiver 1 here so far, but keep in mind, Tyler Lockett historically has been a very up and down player. I think DK Metcalf will come through with that elite production, so we'll still have him ranked as a wide receiver 1. And our last wide receiver in this tier, y'all know after the Thursday night blow-up performance from Amari Cooper, I still came out and I said, you know what? We're still having CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver 1 on this roster. CeeDee Lamb comes out, smashes this past week against the Los Angeles Chargers. CeeDee Lamb's still going to be my wide receiver 1 here, making it in the last spot in this tier going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia has had a very good defense so far, but they did just give up a considerable amount of points to Deebo Samuel. I'm viewing Deebo Samuel a lot more in the light of what you actually have with CeeDee Lamb and players running routes a little closer to the line of scrimmage, a little more over the middle of the field compared to Amari Cooper, who's working more so on the boundary. So I think this will probably be a much better matchup for CeeDee Lamb based on what we had with Deebo Samuel this past week. And now our next wide receiver coming in at wide receiver 13 had a fantastic performance. This is going to be DJ Moore here. So with DJ Moore going up against Houston, I mean, he actually had 11 targets this past week, and he really shows that he is the alpha wide receiver in Carolina. And this is a great matchup to go alongside it. I mean, right now, Robbie Anderson, for whatever reason, is not getting used whatsoever. Thomas, can you please throw up the underdog pick'em lines for Thursday night? Very surprised to see this significant gap between Moore and Robbie Anderson. Just kidding. You shouldn't be surprised to see it because we've already established the fact that DJ Moore is that alpha wide receiver in this offense. Robbie Anderson is someone definitely trending in the incorrect direction. And of course, make sure you let me know what side of those lines you like on Underdog Fantasy for taking the over, the under on DJ Moore's receiving yards. And also go use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy. Make a $10 deposit for the max deposit bonus. Also, when you use that promo code, every single day you get multiple entries and to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. Also, it supports the channel a ton, so make sure you go ahead and make that deposit on Underdog Fantasy. Find that link in the description of the video. Now, going over to our next wide receiver, we're going to have Amari Cooper in this same tier. So going back to what we were saying with CeeDee Lamb, I mean, I'm not in love with the matchup that we have for Philadelphia, but one thing I want to focus in on is the fact that Dak Prescott is just going to have such a narrow target tree in this offense, going and having to funnel everything through CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper for the time that Michael Gallup's out. I know that Amari Cooper did really have a down performance in week 2, but if we just remember what he did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is a wide receiver that without one performance, not one performance only, is still a top 6 wide receiver on the season. Really want to be buying into the bounce back for Amari Cooper. Now, our next wide receiver that I know a lot of people are going to be screaming at me for having this low, We're going to go with Terry McLaurin going up against the Buffalo Bills here. I'm in a pretty tough matchup going up against Buffalo. We have to remember this is a team that shut down the Miami Dolphins. Yes, Tua Tagovailoa got injured, but 0.0 points for the Miami Dolphins this past week against Buffalo. Also, the Buffalo Bills allowed nothing to the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 1. I think it's going to be a very tough matchup for Terry McLaurin, and at the end of the day, Taylor Heinicke is still his quarterback. Now, my favorite wide receiver in fantasy this year, someone we drafted everywhere, is going to come in here at wide receiver 16, lower than where we have him in our rest of season rankings. This will be Chris Godwin at wide receiver 16 against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm thinking this is the first tough defense that we have seen Tom Brady in this Bucs offense face all season. You're going to see the implied team total, according to Las Vegas, be significantly lower than what it's been over the past 2 weeks, given the fact that while, yes, there's been production to go around in Tampa, they did also play Dallas and Atlanta. I mean, pretty much the two easiest matchups you could possibly have. Of course, you still have to love this Bucs offense and Tom Brady, but going up against the Los Angeles Rams, it will be a tougher spot. So we are going to have Chris Godwin, our guy, down here at wide receiver 16. And at wide receiver 17, we are going to have the wide receiver 2 so far on this season. We're going to have Tyler Lockett at wide receiver 17 as the last guy in this tier. And with Tyler Lockett here, this is just a player that we know the volatility is going to be there. We know he's going to have those up and down performances. Going back to week 1, I mean, he was fantastic off of 5 targets and 5 targets only. And yes, you should expect the efficiency to be up given the quarterback that he has and given the fact that he does see targets deeper downfield. But still, I'm going to be expecting some negative volatility sometime soon for Tyler Lockett. I think that if you continue to project him as a top 10 wide receiver, eventually that's going to burn you. And now coming in here in our next tier, leading us off, someone that I hated in fantasy drafts this year, but as soon as we had the injury with that same wide receiver on his team, I mean, you had to be bumping up Courtland Sutton significantly. So Courtland Sutton looked fantastic as an alpha wide receiver this past week, and now he is going up against the New York Jets. So yes, we are going to have Courtland Sutton as our wide receiver 17. I think you have to be very excited with what you're going to have from Courtland Sutton. He had a fantastic performance this past week without scoring a touchdown. We know with this large frame as well, that should be something that comes with that volume. Now, all the way down at wide receiver 18, you're going to see someone that, honestly, I want to put higher than this. We just don't know about the situation. We're going to put Allen Robinson here. So with Allen Robinson, a tough matchup going up against the Cleveland Browns. I know that you had Tyreek Hill putting up 200 receiving yards in week 1. I know that Brandon Cooks had a good week as well in week 2. But with Allen Robinson, I'm not willing to buy into the fact that Justin Fields is some great NFL quarterback just yet. Y'all know that I've said Justin Fields is someone that was overhyped in Dynasty, that we prefer Trey Lance. Lance is definitely someone I still want over Justin Fields. And with Fields, he still can be very productive from a fantasy football perspective, because we know with Justin Fields, this is someone with a lot of rushing upside. We don't know exactly what that's going to mean, however, for the passing volume in Chicago. So Allen Robinson, I want to be a little hesitant here, ranking him at wide receiver 18. Still someone that you're starting, as he is a mid wide receiver 2 for you, but I want to be a little hesitant with Justin Fields. Now our next wide receiver, let's go with Robert Woods at wide receiver 19, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a game that you should expect the Los Angeles Rams to have to throw the ball consistently. And yeah, I mean, this past week, they just force-fed Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods essentially all the targets. They didn't use Deshaun Jackson. They didn't use Van Jefferson. They didn't use Tyler Higbee. And if that's the case, and they're going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, where it's a clear game that could turn into a shootout, I think you have to be pretty excited about Robert Woods. Now, our next wide receiver, someone that's a top 5 wide receiver so far this season, is going to be Adam Thielen, going up against the Seattle Seahawks. So with Adam Thielen, I mean, yes, the touchdowns have been there, but the problem is it's so hard to project him to score every single week. And if you're not going to be able to project that, I think you just have to be a little hesitant on Adam Thielen. I think as soon as you see him have a week where he doesn't score a touchdown, you're going to see that production drastically fall down, because you're not just betting on Adam Thielen because his raw yardage or anything. He's more so a player that you're excited about his red zone role. So I just want to be a little more hesitant with guys like that. We're going to have him at wide receiver 21. Now, wide receiver 22, we called him the bounce back player this past week in a plus matchup. Now he's going up against the Indianapolis Colts with Julio Jones at wide receiver 22. Julio Jones, a must-start player. I mean, that's what we said this past week, and I think that we have to stand by it. And that clearly there was a reason that you had the Tennessee Titans offense failing in week 1. I think this offense still should be far above average, and you should be playing Julio Jones, A.J. Brown, as well as Derrick Henry every damn week. Now, our last wide receiver in this tier is going to be Mike Evans, and we're having Mike Evans all the way down here because I am a little worried that this is going to be the player that draws the Jalen Ramsey matchup because he'll be playing on the outside, whereas I think you see a little more slot usage for both Godwin and Antonio Brown. So Mike Evans is scary, and yes, he always does have that touchdown upside, so you can see that massive spike week. But for now, I think Mike Evans is going to be the last wide receiver in this tier. Now, dropping down one more tier, let's lead it off with Deebo Samuel going up against the Green Bay Packers. And here with Deebo, I mean, this is a wide receiver that you have to continue to play every single week. Called him a must-start guy for you last week, given the fact that you're viewing him as the bona fide wide receiver one now in San Francisco. This is what we said, that he was a much better fit with Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brandon Ayuk is currently injured. I think once Ayuk is fully healthy and Trey Lance is starting, there we probably slightly prefer Brandon Ayuk. But for the time being, I mean, Deebo Samuel's a must-start player for you. Now, at the next spot, we have to put him in here. Mike Williams against the Kansas City Chiefs. With Mike Williams, I mean, you're just viewing him as a wide receiver that's going to be playing in a shootout, as well as the fact that this is someone that's been fantastic through the past 2 weeks. Looks like he is not just getting used as a deep threat wide receiver with an extremely high average depth of target. Looks like he's getting used a little more all over the football field, which is exactly what you're looking for with Mike Williams. And then back-to-back, let's put T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Now, y'all know coming into the year, I wanted T. Higgins over Chase. Then after week one, I'd get a little nervous with that. But T. Higgins does lead the team in targets this past week. I think these are guys that are just neck and neck, and you're essentially making a bet on the overall Pittsburgh Steelers defense, allowing some production for Cincinnati. But it is a tough matchup, so we're going to have them down here in our back-to-back rankings. Now, real quick, let's give out some honorable mentions that I know a lot of people are going to be asking us about and asking why they are not in these rankings. So just so I don't have to answer the same comments down there in the comment section 5 times over. No, Hollywood Brown is not making this list. Yes, Hollywood Brown is a great matchup against Detroit. He would be one of the next wide receivers we would have. He's been fantastic over the past 2 weeks. No, Sterling Shepard is not making this list. I am worried with Sterling Shepard that you're going to see an expanded role for Kenny Golladay now that he just has more familiarity with this offense and Daniel Jones. I'm worried when Evan Ingram comes back that Evan Ingram is going to be taking away targets for Sterling Shepard. I'm worried once they take the training wheels off from Saquon Barkley, he'll be getting more usage as well. I think that Shepard is definitely on the wrong path. And then Brandon Cooks, I want nothing to do with starting any Houston Texans players against the Carolina defense when Davis Mills is under center. So please avoid Cooks. Please avoid Shepard. And Hollywood Brown, I am fine with. But I know those are some players we're going to get questions with. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I really hope you got something from it. Please make sure you go down there, drop that like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Just leave any comment ever, and you will be getting a Fantasy Flock Network hat. We're giving those giveaways every single video, so just make sure you keep leaving those comments. Stay subscribed, stay dropping those likes. And yeah, that should be it. I hope I see you in the live stream tonight.